Both are right. This has been an extraordinary sequence of games for the Avalanche. They finish off the Jets 6-3 last night. The Avalanche scored no fewer than 5 goals in any of the 5 games in the series. I'm Shawn Drotar. Sandy Clough is on my right. The great Danny Bailey is in the booth. And our caller text line 303-831-1340. Sandy, the Avalanche move on. They will face the winner of the Dallas Stars and Vegas Golden Knights series. That latest game there will actually face off in just about an hour and a half. Get an idea of where they're at. But that series is tied 2-2. So for the Avalanche, the better matchup is the Knights, simply because you get home ice. That would be very nice. But I think if the Avalanche had their, we're going to be perfectly satisfied with resting while maybe those two teams go 7.
Oh, well, without a doubt.
Go knock each other around for a few more days.
Sure, and we know it'll go at least 6, obviously.
Yep.
It's 2-2. So we know there's going to be a break for the Avalanche. All the more important that they finished off the Jets last night and did not themselves face a Game 6.
Right.
Or maybe a Game 7. Who knows? Although I thought the separation between the two teams increased throughout the series. And I also agreed with Rick Bowness last night when he said that Winnipeg in Game 5 played its best game of the series, even better than their Game 1 7-6 win. They played a better brand of hockey.
It was a good hockey game.
It was a good game to watch, but the Avalanche had a 5-3 lead. Yes, they added to that with a 6th goal into the empty net, but I went back just to make sure that I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see last night during the course of the first period. I thought the Avalanche owned the first period. I really did. I thought it might have in many ways been their best period, because the only goal they gave up was a goal in which Manson, in trying to clear the puck, shot it off Lehkonen, and it bounced into the net. Georgiev was not at fault. And I think I understand when you're live and you're joining the game from various points, you get distracted. But I was a little disappointed in both the play-by-play man and the analyst, who didn't seem to recognize that Kyle Connor had as much to do with the first goal as the two of us did last night.
An own goal for
he was
both
a little
teams,
closer
basically
to the play, and therefore he got credit. But he had nothing to do with the goal. And to compare that, as they later did once they finally realized that the first goal had not been scored off a Winnipeg stick, to compare that first goal for Winnipeg to the one the Avalanche scored later on, which is a goal you see all the time where a shot bounces in off a couple of players who happen to be Winnipeg Jets, but you see that happen all the time. You don't see a defenseman trying to clear the puck and bounce it directly into the net off his teammate.
Right, bounce it off his teammate straight back in.
That you don't see.
No.
And to compare the two shows an ignorance of the game that should make both the play-by-play man and the analyst shame of themselves. And I happen to like AJ.
AJ Malesko.
Malesko a lot. I think she's exceptionally good, and I enjoy her commentary. Again, I understand. I've been in the position where you have people yelling in your ear, you're doing a live broadcast, and you get distracted. But they must have looked at that replay 2 or 3 times, and they did not pick up on what happened. They just gave Connor credit like it was a conventional goal. And it wasn't until late in the first period, as the first period was ending, that maybe a producer yelled at him, although I don't know where that producer was earlier in the period, that the goal had been scored the way it was. But my point is, even at their best, playing against the Avs at their best, Winnipeg was no match for the Avalanche. And, I was half right. I said the series would go 5 games. I just had the wrong team winning.
Yeah, the presumption was that the loss of Jonathan Drouin would be perhaps catastrophic. It turns out it was not. The Avs are rolling offensively like they have not all year. None of that holds up unless Alexandar Georgiev gets better, too. And even in this game,
I agree with that, too.
In these couple of situations here where this game was still close, Georgiev actually had outright robberies that would have kept that game.
He made the big, timely saves.
Would have tied those games or gotten it within one. Georgiev was really, really good. Nathan MacKinnon had a chance to speak specifically about the Avs goalie who, after game one, everyone, nationally, locally, was saying, you can't play him again. You've got to put in the backup. Now, they couldn't put in the backup because Jussi Zananen happened to be sick. So that wasn't an option for Jared Bednar. But Georgiev got right in a hurry. MacKinnon had a chance to discuss it.
A lot of mental toughness. Obviously wasn't his best game one. We also hung him out to dry, and then to bounce back 4 straight really stellar performances, made some huge saves in every game. So really excited to have him get hot, and he's a great teammate, great goaltender, and a lot of confidence in him.
How about this? After game one, in which his save percentage was only .696, and he gave up 7 goals. Gave up a grand total of 8 goals for the rest of the series. And one of them, as you pointed out, is really Josh Manson bouncing it off of Lehkonen, but that goes on to Georgiev. Despite that, here were his save percentages. In game 1, .696. In game 2, .933. In game 3, .917. In game 4, .963. And in the game yesterday, 34 saves for a .944 save percentage. That means that even with a .696 in the first game, he averaged for the whole series a .900 save percentage. That is a monumental comeback if Georgiev plays anything like those games where he is averaging a roughly .930 save percentage in wins. The Avalanche are going to be very tough to beat.
I'll even give out a little bit better news than that, just a little bit. .932 in the last 4 games is the exact save percentage. And that's exceptional.
That's superstar in the playoffs.
Anybody's book. Okay?
He was terrific.
The Avalanche had goaltending that was around .900 in their Stanley Cup year of 2022 during the postseason. Overall, that was Francouz in the half dozen games he played, and that was Kemper in the other games, and it was .900, and it was more than good enough. The Avs went 16-4 that year. They're off to a good start in pursuit of that kind of run again. The way they're playing now, they beat anybody. They certainly beat anybody in the West. Now, could Carolina be a tough out? Along with Florida and any of the other Eastern possibilities, Rangers included. The Rangers just swept Washington. And the Rangers have great goaltending. We all know that. No one knows that better than Georgiev.
The only reason he's here.
Backup to Shesterkin with the Rangers. So they understand that. But playing this way, they played in a way that nobody has played this year in the playoffs. They have played in a way that no Quebec/Colorado team has ever played in the history of the franchise in the National Hockey League through 5 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the first 5 games, and scoring the 28 goals that they scored. They've never done that. And the Avalanche/Nordiques had exceptional offensive ability. Some of those 1980s teams with the Stastny brothers and Michel Goulet, they were goal-scoring machines.
That was the record that Nathan MacKinnon broke
in 1981-82 in Quebec City. I saw them in person covering the Hockey Rockies as I was at the time. I saw them score 10 goals in one game. Now, the Rockies stunk, but 10 goals, it could have been 15. They were an offensive machine. Never in the playoffs did all those great players or Sakic and Forsberg teams score 28 goals in the first 5 games of the playoffs. It's never happened in the history of the franchise.
The record in the history of the NHL is 7 games to start a playoff series with 5 or more goals. The Avalanche have 5.
And 5. I think that streak will come to an end
too.
Against either Vegas or Dallas rather quickly, as in probably game 1. But the point is they don't have to score 5 or 6 goals. And I said, you said, most sane people said going into the playoffs, highest scoring team in the league during the season, averaging a little under 4 goals a game, right? And they'll never be able to match that in the playoffs against the best defensive team in the league that gave up fewer than 200 goals all year.
Likely Vezina
through 82
winner
games.
in net, too.
Well, yes, but the 200 goals, lower than no other team in the league gave up fewer than 200
Stingiest
goals.
defense
One
in the
team
league.
did. That team was Winnipeg. They outscored the Avs 17-4 4 or whatever it was in their 3 head-to-head games during the season. And for the Avalanche to average in this series 2 goals short of 6 goals per game. 6 per game. Game 1 was typical. The Game 2 individual performance by Georgiev, at least in terms of save percentage, was what he averaged starting in Game 2 on through Game 5 last night. We can debate what the turning point of the series was as far as Georgiev and perhaps the Avalanche are concerned. I believe that they got a little bit of a break in game number 2. They're down 2-1 in the second period. Kyle Connor, whose series was ruined after he could not score, hit the post.
Yep.
Less than 2 minutes later, the Avalanche scored to tie the game. If that goal is scored, if he doesn't hit the post and scores instead, it's 3-1. The Avs are already a little shaky, and so was Georgiev at that point. I thought through the first half of Game 2, he was shaky. He settled after that, and he was brilliant, not just good, brilliant for the rest of the series. The other argument that was advanced by Corey Masiak of the Denver Post, argued that in Game 3, it was 2-1 Winnipeg in the second period. Tyler Toffoli on a breakaway stopped by Georgiev, and it was Corey's contention that was the save that saved the series for the Avalanche.
That was a big one. And here's the thing I think that's interesting.
And it killed Toffoli's game, too.
Yes.
Although Toffoli did get a game
He got a goal last night after being demoted all the way down to the fourth line.
Being placed down to the fourth line, right.
The part that's exciting about this, 2 things are sustainable. I think, one, now there are better offensive teams left in the playoffs than Winnipeg. Offensive teams.
Of course.
The Avalanche defense was very good. But here's what I'm looking at in the offense for the Avs that I think might be sustainable. The presumption when you look at Connor Hellebuck, who may win the Vezina for the best goaltender, certainly one of the finalists, of a line of 1-4 with a 5.23 goals against and a save percentage of .870 is a disaster. And it's easy to look at that and say, Hellebuck was a wreck, that was the problem. But actually, a closer look at this reveals something. Here's his save percentages in all 5 games. .870, .871, .872, .867, and .871 last night. Hellebuck was actually quite consistent. Incredibly consistent.
Consistently, yeah. I would say consistently mediocre, but not consistently bad.
But my point is what the Avalanche were doing against one of the very best goaltenders in the league. Hellebuck did not have one of those games where he was a disaster, like you're saying. He wasn't amazing in that series.
Well, you know what? I thought his worst game
but he wasn't,
was the first game that they won.
It was. And he was not a sieve. This is in part when you see that kind of consistency. That is more a statement of what the Avalanche are able to sustain offensively, line after line, than a failure by Hellebuck.
Series more than Winnipeg lost it. And, the head coach may have his critics up in Winnipeg today. I imagine there are a lot of them. But his attitude, although it was the same pattern a year ago, his attitude this year was completely different. Last year, after winning the first game in the first round against Vegas and losing the next 4, he came into the press room after they had lost the series 4-1, and he said there was no pushback, and he blasted his team. He threw virtually everybody under the bus, including the Stars, whom they signed to 7-year contracts during the offseason. He laid it on the line, and he laid them out. If you watched him last night after Game 5, that was not the same coach. Even though the same pattern took place. They won the first game and lost the next 4. His attitude was completely different. He said, we played our best game of the series tonight. We go out with our heads held high. I don't know if that was an exact quote, but that was what he was implying. And he said, yes, we have to look at ourselves during the offseason, but he wanted basically the team broken up last year.
Right.
And there were some changes and some additions made. The puzzling thing to me about what he did, and again, I say the Avalanche won last night more than Winnipeg lost. The Avalanche won this series more than Winnipeg lost it. What puzzled me last night was that the combinations he used in the first two periods, yeah, they were behind 3-2, but they were playing well. The Avalanche are just a little bit better. And then he rearranged the lines and went back to some of the old combinations in the third period, and the third period was their worst period.
It was.
And it was the Avalanche's best period, at least on the scoreboard. They scored 3 goals out of the 6, including the empty netter in the third period. But I will say this for the Avalanche. The power play was lethal. That's sustainable. They are hot on the power play, and they are all playing. If you're talking about the top unit, you've got Rantanen, you've got Nichushkin, you've got, who am I leaving out? MacKinnon, Makar, and Lehkonen.
Yep.
Right? All playing at top form. That's sustainable. I don't care who's killing penalties against them. Those guys playing as they are right now, you get all 5 are threats to score. There's no good way, foolproof way of defending them. And in addition to that, they've got improved goaltending. They've got fourth line effort and production. All that's sustainable, Shawn. All of it. Coming through in the clutch as Mikko Rantanen did. I did get that prediction right yesterday. Yep. I said he'd score 2 goals, and that's exactly what he did.
He did. The turnaround has obviously been a bit remarkable, but I think some of the reaction from Bonus and from the Jets, quite frankly, is fair. We've seen this in playoffs all over everywhere because the Avalanche simply morphed into Godzilla. The Jets ran
into Stanley Cup champions that they were 2 years ago.
If you were the Jets, you just ran into a buzzsaw, and there was probably nothing you could do about it. Jared Bednar had a chance to talk about the Avs turnaround and the overall value of this series.
I used to hate that saying that you got to lose before you win, but realistically, like after we won in 2022, I know that was part of it. You know, losing the handful of years before when we thought we had a team that could win. Even our guys said it, you know, like we thought we were ready last year or the year before, and we finished tops of the league and then didn't get it done. But they learned a lot of lessons from that, and exactly that, you know, knowing that they could push themselves to another level in order to win in 2022. And we were fortunate to have a great team and do that. But those are tough lessons to learn when you really have a good team like Winnipeg does. That's a really good team over there. They played hard the entire series. They're highly competitive. They're rock solid, committed to their defending. I just thought our guys, they did a really nice job. Like, I think that's the best hockey we've played for 5 games in a row all season long, and that's what it takes this time of year, and that's partly our experience, I think.
Great statement.
It is, and I think the part that's interesting about it is you're right. It is the best 5 games because the only thing is that Georgiev, and to a lesser extent, Josh Manson had crummy game ones. But the Avalanche played well enough to win that game otherwise.
But they were 2 of the guys who bounced back.
And
right?
And both of them, the faith in with their coaches and their teammates were rewarded exponentially. For the rest of the series, Georgiev and Manson were 2 of the best players on the ice. Every game.
Right.
From 2 through 5.
Well, they were on the podium together after one of the games.
Right.
Proof of what you're saying. And what happened was fascinating to me, especially with respect to Manson, because after game 1, he said, I stunk, first of all, but part of the problem was I was focused on offense, and that's not my game.
They don't terribly need it seems, although Manson has been part of that as well.
But my point is, he said after game 1, I'm going to emphasize defense. Well, maybe he did, but he was far more productive offensively after game 1 than he was during game 1.
The Avalanche were good defensively, too.
And he got better on defense, obviously.
We'll continue to talk about this as the matchup between the Stars and the Golden Knights go along again. 2-2 face-off for them, 5:30. If you're an Avs fan, probably the Knights are the team you'd like to see simply because the Avs would be at home ice. But the longer that goes, the better it is for the Avalanche, who get a break